Okay, so today we're going to take a quick diversion from our lessons, and this is specifically for those of you taking my grade 11 class, and we're going to be linking a few tools together. And one of those tools is Git and GitHub, and the other one is NetBeans. And we've been using NetBeans to learn how to program, and you're just starting that. And we're using GitHub as a repository, as a place to store copies and versions, also as a place for you to hand in assignments. And right now those two aren't linked together. And I'm going to walk you through the process today, and while I do that, I'm going to explain a little bit about what's going on. So the first thing you need to do is you need to come into to GitHub, and you need to go into the particular assignment that you're working on. And when you do that inside GitHub, you will get a screen that looks like this. And specifically what you're looking for is this particular URL, this address. And this address over here is basically a spot on GitHub where you are going to be able to put your code. And it's going to be able to keep versions of your code. So if something goes wrong on your home computer, it's going to be there. And so what you need to do here is pretty simple. You can either just select it and copy, or you can hit the copy button from this point, and then we're done with GitHub. So go ahead, you can follow through, find your GitHub, find the assignment that we're working on, look at this link here, and then click on the copy. I'm going to do that myself really quickly. And you're going to have a project that you're working on. You can only link one project with your GitHub. So it's going to be the project for the assignment that you're currently looking at or working on. And from here, there's a couple steps we need to follow. The first thing you need to do is you need to start something called version control. And version control is something that's useful to you, but it's also used a lot in industry as well. And it's a way of taking snapshots of the changes that you make to your code. So when you think about Google and people working on the Google algorithm, you want to be very careful that you're not messing things up. So every little incremental change, there might be a snapshot taken so that you can always go back if you need to, but also you can see the development as it takes place. It's really easy to start this versioning. You right click on your project level here, you go down to versioning, and you'll see that there's a number of different techniques for creating these versions, and the one that we're using is going to be Git. So you want to initialize a Git repository. It's going to ask you for a location. Where do you want us to store all these versions that you're creating? You could just use the default. That's the easiest. Click OK, and guess what? You've now started version control. Now the way version control works is every time you want to take a snapshot of your code, you are going to use what's called a commit. And a commit is just like, I want to take a snapshot, I want to take a version right now. And my recommendation, and really what I'm asking, is at least once a class at the end, preferably twice, you take a moment and you do a commit and you push. And that is going to be incorporated into the marks for the course. So you have to make sure you get used to this process and following this process. So what I do is I've made some changes to my code. I want to take a version of it. I right click. You'll see now that versioning menu has been replaced with Git. And we come down here to this button called commit. Now the very first time I create my very first version, there might be a couple questions that come up, but after that it's going to be a really quick process. So best practice is that you put some sort of a commit message in there. So what did you actually work on today? Added a method to do addition, let's say. And then you just click on the commit button down here. You can see that here are all of the files that it's going to commit, because this is the first time we've made a version here. It's going to ask some questions. It doesn't have a user yet, so just accept default user, which is going to be myself. You can see it's done that, and that commit, that version has been made. The next step that you're going to follow, and again, you're going to be doing this, once, twice a class, is you're going to take that version and you're going to store it up onto GitHub, which is basically up onto the cloud. And that involves a process of right-clicking, going down to Git over here, and over to Remote, because this is now no longer on your computer. You're going to access a remote version. And you're going to see some weird terminology here. There's something called push, and there's something called pull. So if you think about you being on your home computer and GitHub being out there in the cloud, pushing is taking your stuff and pushing it out to the cloud. And that's what you're going to be doing in this course for the most part. You're going to be just keep pushing and pushing and pushing out to the cloud and taking those snapshots. You can imagine that if you were working collaboratively with other people, or if you were working in a business setting, for example, that not only would you be pushing, but you'd want to take changes that other people have made and you want to be pulling that down to your copy of it. And then so there's this kind of flow, this workflow that happens between pushing your stuff out and pulling new stuff in, pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling. This is a very simplified version of what's happening, because as it turns out, you're also able to create branches so that you don't always have to work on the main line of code. You can work on a little side project and then you can merge it back in. And so it does get quite complicated. But for what we're doing in this course, you're just going to keep pushing. And you should, as long as you kind of follow that process, commit, push, you're not going to have any problems. So we're going to push. Not pushed upstream, just push. And the first thing you're going to notice is it's going to say, please specify a Git repository location. And that's where you take in that URL that you had copied earlier and you paste it right into this spot. It's going to ask for your Git username. It's going to ask for your Git password. And then once you've done those two things, you click Next. It may come up with a prompt or two. It may ask you if you want to create a master. The first time you do it, just click OK, and then you're done. And what will have happened, if we go back to GitHub, you will see that all of your files now are up on GitHub. And every time you do that commit and push, you're going to be updating those files on there, creating another version, a history of what's been done. So as of this point, and this is a good practice if you're following along, is the expectation is that you are going to be doing this on a daily basis. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments, leave it in my email. Otherwise, hope that this lesson was helpful.